What's up, everyone? This is Steve from Bloom Audio, and today we have the Ananda Nano from HIFIMAN. Ananda Nano was announced alongside the HIFIMAN Aria Organic. Both of those headphones feature sonic and visual differences from the previous revision in the series. So, how does the new Ananda stand out in HIFIMAN's lineup? Could Nano be the best Ananda yet? Ananda has always had a tough time in HIFIMAN's lineup. Below it, you've got those budget favorites with great value, bang for the buck, like the Edition XS and the Sundara. And then at the next level, you've got the HIFIMAN Aria and the HE6, which are sort of like this flagship gateway, or some people even would consider that endgame. Other than being the most efficient headphone in the lineup, Ananda has never really had a clear identity. It's sort of just in the middle. You want to upgrade from a Sundara, but you can't afford the Aria, check out the Ananda. So we're gonna check out the build, the design, the sound, do some comparisons, and take a closer look at how Ananda Nano looks to change all that and really solidify Ananda's unique identity in HIFIMAN's lineup. Probably the first thing you notice about Nano is the new paint job. Where previous versions of the Ananda have this sort of silver aluminum look on the grille but a black frame, Nano does the silver aluminum look for the entire frame, the grille and all that, kind of leaving the pads and the headband become more of an accent with the black and the primary color being the silver. Now, I love the way it looks. I do have some concerns as to how well it'll hold up from dings and other things, but definitely looks great out of the box. In a subtle change, Nano has a little bit more clamp force than previous generations of Ananda, and does make for a generally pretty comfortable fit. This feels more secure on my head than the Ananda Stealth or Original, and that's a big improvement for me, as I never liked the way those fit. But I'd say overall comfort, it's about average, maybe above average in terms of just the feel, the weight, and all of that. Comes with a case, which is a definite plus. And other than that, you just get the cable, which is a pretty long black rubberized 3.5 millimeter cable that also comes with this 6.3 millimeter adapter. And while this cable isn't anything special, part of the comparison, we pulled out an original Ananda, and the sort of premium cable that comes with that isn't really to my taste. And I actually prefer, again, it's very simple cable, but I prefer the long black rubberized cable that comes with this than the supposedly more premium ones that came with the original Ananda. On the technical side, Ananda uses HIFIMAN's stealth magnets and nanometer thickness diaphragm, has 14 ohm impedance and 94 dB sensitivity, and the weight comes in just under 1 pound at 14.8 ounces. With that combination of sensitivity and impedance, these are really efficient for planar magnetic headphones. That's a bit of a switch for HIFIMAN, who, headphones like the Susvara and the HE6 are sort of known as, that benchmark for, how powerful is your headphone amp? Well, it can drive the Susvara, it can drive the HE6. And this is more like, just like plug it into your iPhone with the headphone dongle. While Ananda Nano is really easy to drive and really sounds good on a huge variety of devices, even with very low power, we did also find it scaled up really well, and you could get some better performance out of it with a higher end headphone amp. Again, just that normal stuff, sort of opening it up and all of that. But yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the sound. So Ananda Nano hits just outside of HIFIMAN's typical house sound. It's a little bit extra punch in the bass, some warmth in the mids, and even a little bit of softness at places in the highs. And of course, there's that higher efficiency as well. And all these things are true of past revisions of the Ananda, but it feels like this is the first time they've dialed it in just right. So in the bass, you get great extension, and again, that little bit of extra kick in the mid bass helps add that energy in pop, EDM, hip hop, rock, other genres like that. But you don't lose out on the texture either. There's that elevation in the bass, but still a great sense of the character of bass instruments. The mids draw a little more focus here than a typical HIFIMAN sound. There is a sense of warmth there, and just an overall feeling of very organic mid-range and a very natural timbre that I don't necessarily associate this kind of mid-range with HIFIMAN typically. The treble is interesting because there's some potential for brightness there depending on the track and the source, but it does feel a little bit pulled back from a typical HIFIMAN treble. It doesn't have that same, really airy, spacious feeling in the highs. And I also find it to be a place where, depending on the source, the quality of your source, not necessarily the power, but the quality of the DAC and other things, can have a bit more impact in the treble. So that's to say, while the power is sufficient to give you that dynamics and slam, even with something like an Apple headphone adapter, it's that upper end resolution, and sometimes you get a sense of graininess and some harshness in the treble from a cheaper, sort of dongle type DAC that's not offering the same level of quality in the output. So where even with the fairly low power of, say, an Aston Kern SR35 in single-ended mode, I found that actually sounded better than some, $100 range DACs with a 4.4 balanced output that's giving you around the same amount of power, but that quality is important in that upper end. I think that's somewhere that Ananda is a little bit revealing of those potential shortcomings in the treble there. The imaging is another place that Ananda Nano seems to differ a little bit from the typical HIFIMAN sound. There's a good sized soundstage. It does feel very three-dimensional, good positioning and pretty good separation in the image. It just doesn't have that sort of big, spacious, airy, sort of aria sound that you really associate with HIFIMAN. It's a little bit more tactile, a little bit more grounded. Yeah, I think it's really solid imaging. It's just not typical of HIFIMAN. While there are a number of comparisons you could make here, like some reviewers have brought in the Meze 109 Pro, I think is a really interesting comparison with the Ananda Nano. We decided to bring in two other HIFIMAN headphones, namely the original Ananda and the Edition XS. From a visual perspective, the materials quality here is all about the same range. Ananda Nano stands out primarily with that, the silver frame all throughout, where the other ones have the black. Of course, it's also worth noting the Edition XS uses a different headband style. And while visually I like the Ananda headband style better, I actually kind of find the Edition XS to be a little bit more comfortable overall, just the way that kind of sits on my head, and also with the long hair. I don't know, just that headband always worked a little bit better for me. But overall, in terms of the quality, these are all about on the same tier. So in comparison to the original Ananda, Nano's treble does feel a little bit softer. It's not as likely to get harsh or bright, and it also feels more natural. I always found that one of Ananda's weak points was the treble could get very tinny and metallic easily. Nano also kind of hits harder in the bass. It just feels more organic through the mid-range. And listening to these side by side, it does kind of feel like this was the sound that they were trying to create with Ananda all along. And they just really got the technology lined up to achieve it with the Nano. So we didn't have the Ananda Stealth available to sort of do a three-way comparison of the evolution of Ananda here. But I think most of what you say about the differences between the Stealth and the original, and the differences between the Nano and the Stealth, it's really kind of just iterative evolution, where I felt Stealth had better bass, better treble, sounded more natural than the original. Nano does the same things, just to a larger degree. So again, you see this evolution where as they're adding this new technology into the Ananda, I think they're able to achieve the original vision for the headphone, which is something that's slightly different than a lot of their other offerings. Edition XS is just kind of a different animal altogether, where Ananda, again, has this really unique sound that does start to stand out more in the HIFIMAN lineup. Edition XS seems like it's trying to capture an Aria at a lower price point without quite the same level of technical performance. So you get that well-extended linear bass, get those airy highs, and that kind of more spacious feeling from Edition XS. But you don't get the mid-range that Ananda has, and that sort of warmth there, and that more power in the bass. So really, between Ananda Nano and Edition XS, I think a lot of that comes down to what you're looking for. Do you want kind of like a baby Aria? Or do you want something that's got a little bit more unique character here that bends a little bit warmer? To me, past versions of the Ananda were never quite there. It was clear they were trying to be something different than Sundara or Aria. They could never quite nail it down. Ananda Stealth was definitely a step closer to this, but I think Ananda Nano is the first one to really capture that vision. So if you want a headphone that has that HIFIMAN sound, but with a bit more fun in there, Ananda Nano really doesn't compromise on the detail, on the performance, to give that little bit of extra punch, that bit of warmth in the mids, and just all these things that come together to really set it apart. Thanks for watching. Check out Ananda Nano and a lot of other great products at bloomaudio.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be back soon with more high-fidelity audio content.